are joining us here today. I am sorry that I do not have a video feed available. Zoom did not like me this morning, but that's okay because this is not about me. This is about our PPCC community. Be sure to check the PDW guide. It was emailed again this morning. There are some great opportunities this week. Today we have HIPS and a virtual all-college lunch. On Tuesday, we have conversations about race, a whole series of really great workshops led by you, people in our community. On Wednesday, we have e-learning, all faculty meeting and division meetings. Thursday, there are some great offerings about our PPCC community and how to do remote instruction, how to support our students. And Friday, we'll have repeat offerings. As a part of the PPCC community, I have appreciated Dr. Bolton's leadership, his dedication, and his willingness to engage with challenging topics, and his passion for student success. And I think we're going to hear more about that today. And welcome. And Dr. Bolton, it is yours.
Thank you very much, Karen. I really appreciate that kind introduction. And just want to thank CETL in general, all your hard work in putting together the PDW and the organization that's gone behind that, including my address and all of the workshops that will be happening. I want to acknowledge and thank Noelle Dolan, Warren Epstein for their help in putting today's presentation together. Noelle always makes it look beautiful and just does such a great job with that. And finally, I just want to remind everybody that throughout the presentation, if you'd like, you can put questions in the chat, and Warren is monitoring the chat. And at the end of the end of the presentation, I'll call on Warren to help with some questions, and so he'll feed those in, and so you can just drop those in anytime if anything isn't clear to you or you would like more information. And I just really want to remind folks, especially newer people to the college, if you haven't been to these, that this is about you. And I'm really trying to make this a good use of your time, trying to connect you to information that will be useful, as well as some larger picture of how Pikes Peak Community College fits into our community and our role. And so thank you for joining. I think we've got a great group on, and look forward to engaging with you in the Q&A at the end of the presentation. So I want to start, let's see, where am I going to start? I need to start here, and I want to say I doubt there's anybody out of the 200-300 people who are on this morning. I doubt that there's anybody that wasn't really affected by the images you saw last week on broadcasts from our Capitol, and the experience of living through that and that reporting. I know we were all impacted by it, and I want to talk for just a moment about Pikes Peak Community College role here in this. And so I don't want to talk about the politics or who's to blame or who incited or any of that. There are lots of pundits and reporters and opinion people out there offering all sorts of input on that. But I do want to say that we have a role here. And I'd like to just take a moment to remind you of, I expect everybody on this call, probably most people are familiar with this quote, but if you go back to our founding fathers, from the very beginning of our nation, there was a strong line and connection built between democracy and education and an educated populace. And so Thomas Jefferson, many quotes from Thomas Jefferson and other founding fathers about education and democracy, but this one particularly speaks to me. If a nation expects to be ignorant and free in a state of civilization, it expects what never was and never will be. Thomas Jefferson and others also, he spoke extensively on free press as well. But democracy is connected to an educated population, and that is the cornerstone and the foundation of a strong democracy. And so I'd like to offer to you a few thoughts about that. One is I'm disturbed by reading I've been doing and surveys I've seen that really indicate that a lot of Americans today do not know how their government works and operates. And I know Rick Foster and Elsa Diaz and others in political science really work at that at Pikes Peak Community College, but not everybody takes political science. And so I want to encourage you, if you have the opportunity to create assignments or learning opportunities for students that might help them better understand how our government works, just some of the basics of the three branches of government and the checks and balances that come from that, and the process of how things become law, or how we determine who has what kinds of authority within the United States to make decisions. I think we're struggling with that. And so I'd encourage you, if you can, to help students with that. I would say that also critical thinking and analysis are incredibly important right now, that people be able, and our students be able, to critically think and analyze information that they're seeing. And when I think about our students in our role as a college, in how we play out on this world stage and what we're doing, we endeavor to prepare students well, to go into our economy, to be self-sufficient, to be good workers, to be able to start businesses or work within other businesses and organizations and be successful, or to transfer on to universities on a path. And that's a really important part of what we do. But also important is that we create good citizens. And our role is imperative that students come out of our college being able to operate as fully functional citizens in our country that understand the machinations of our country and how it works. So teaching people how government operates, teaching critical thinking and analysis. And finally, I would say really critical is being, and tied to all of those is being able to analyze information and sources of information. I don't know that any people in our history as a country have ever dealt with the level of misinformation and disinformation that's out there that we have right now. And so I'm not pointing out or trying to say what is or isn't the right information, but what I am saying is that there are good standards by which we measure the quality of information and the sources of information, and what is acceptable and what could be believed and relied on, and what should be treated with some skepticism. And so I know that this is part of many classes already, and many faculty already focus very strongly on ensuring that students are able to analyze sources of information and where that comes from, but never has it been more important. And so I encourage you in your classes this spring, if you're able to work on any of those three fronts, that I believe that our role in developing citizens who are able to, as Thomas Jefferson talked about, to be able to be fully functional and informed about what's happening in our country is really important. So thank you for letting me talk about this for a few minutes. I know it's all on all of our minds this week. I also could not launch into a talk to the college without talking about COVID, of course. And I do recognize and want to say that there is a lot of reason for hope. And Warren and Noel titled this today, "Light at the End of the Tunnel." And I believe we do see the light at the end of the tunnel right now. We are, to use sort of a football analogy, maybe we're at about the 20-yard line and we've just got a little ways to go. We can see the end, but we've got a ways to go. But things are getting better, at least in Colorado right now. So I want to bring up the El Paso County Health Department dashboard. I want to say again, El Paso County has been doing the best job of any county I can find. And I've been looking at other counties trying to get advanced information about what might be coming our way. So I've been looking at many other counties in Colorado and even other cities around the nation. Nobody's doing a better job with transparent data reporting than El Paso County. That's my opinion. They're just doing an outstanding job. And so a couple of really key happenings here just very recently. Last week, the governor moved us, El Paso County, and many other counties from level red to level orange. So that's where we are today. that triggered me to put out a notice to our deans and academic leadership that I believe we could start spring semester back where the same place we started fall. And I'll say a little bit more about that in a minute, but really glad to see us moving back to Orange, being able to open up our businesses, our restaurants, gyms, other things a little bit. And if you look at our data from the county, what's really notable is, we had this enormous mountain of cases that built up, really leading up to Thanksgiving. So as I scroll over, I think we're at about Thanksgiving at about here. And so what was predicted was that there was going to be an enormous spike after Thanksgiving. And I said in multiple public appearances here at the college and talks that January would be our darkest days, that following Christmas and New Year's and people gathering for the holidays, that we expected just incredible spikes, and really was very anxious about what was going to happen following the holidays. And I expected we might be starting January and spring semester in a very tight lockdown situation, but that's not the case really. As you can see, we have dropped down dramatically from these highs of being back here. We were experiencing as high as almost 1,400 cases per 100,000 in a day. And now we've dropped down to around 450 or so. We are seeing a little bump up. It's really hard to tell what that is. Are we going to start plateauing? Are we going to continue going down, or is it going to build back up? We really don't know. But, and I think what we can say about Thanksgiving and Christmas and the predictions of rather dire predictions of what would happen following the holidays is we really don't know. There's a lot we don't know about. So the cyclical nature of this virus and how transmission occurs, but we've seen this sort of over and over, these big spikes and then reductions later. I do want to take you to one other slide here from the health department. And if you look at the bottom of this in particular, this is hospitalizations. So you can see that hospitalizations are also tracking very similar to what case numbers are. That's not surprising, but it is important because hospitalizations and the capacity of our hospitals has been the number one issue, sort of driving public health policy, driving the governor's decisions about when to lock down or not to lock down or increase levels of lockdown. And so I'm very encouraged to see us really dropping down in hospitalizations, meaning that our hospitals have significant capacity right now. And so I'm optimistic that we will be able to remain open as we are today and hopefully improve. So as I talk about COVID, I feel like it's really important to acknowledge and empathize and hear the pain and the suffering and the challenges and trauma people experienced around COVID. And so I just want to take a minute to look in the rearview mirror and acknowledge what people have experienced. And the things that we've heard and the things that we've seen apply to both our employees and their families, as well as our students and their families. And we have seen many people at Pikes Peak Community College lose loved ones. And so in the most difficult situations, often with loved ones unable to be present at the time of death or the time that people were very sick, and prevented from visiting in person by COVID regulations. And we know that people have experienced tremendous personal loss. We also know that this has been a time of tremendous anxiety for a lot of people. We had a lot of students and employees who were suddenly thrust into the role of being homeschooling leaders for their kids with no training, with no experience, with no materials or anticipation of taking on that role. Suddenly you were homeschooling kids while, by the way, also trying to do your job, keep your family afloat, and do all the other things you had to do. And we know it was incredibly stressful. We know that a lot of families had people who lost employment, or lost income and revenue, and that many people in our community are suffering and struggling economically. Small businesses across our community have been hit hard, and a lot of people have lost employment, and especially in the food industry and hospitality industry and related industries. So this has been a really tough time for people. And I just think it's really important to hear it, to acknowledge it, to say it back and say, I know this has been a very difficult time for you, our employees, and for the students that we serve. People have been going through just extraordinary pain associated with isolation and the inability to be with others and connect. And that's been especially true of a lot of our senior citizens. And so I just want to offer this and encourage you to empathize as well with your students as you return to school, to classes. So I want to talk a little bit about plans for spring and where we are. Because of the rolling back, the dropping numbers of illness and the rollback from level red to level orange, we are able to start spring semester exactly where we started fall. And I will acknowledge at near the end of fall semester, we got our leashes yanked and we got pulled back a little bit because numbers were going up so strongly in our community. And so the governor did step in and started to pull back a little bit of some of the opening that we've been able to do. But we're now in a good position, and I'm really optimistic that we're going to be able to maintain this good position, and we're going to get better with this position as we go through spring semester. But we can start spring with our career and tech ed classes in person as needed. And so those classes who have been operating in person and who desire to do that are able to do that. We're also going to have our studio classes able to come back in person. So things like visual arts and dance and theater can be in person as needed. They don't have to be, but you can be. And finally, our science lab classes can return to our labs and be in person again as needed. These decisions are up to instructors and associate deans and deans to work through together. It's going to be really important that we communicate well with our students about what our plans are. But all of those classes, just as at the beginning of fall, can return to campus here at the beginning of spring. And as I look forward with the rollout of the vaccine, and I'm hopeful that sometime during spring semester, we're going to really see thousands and thousands of people across our community vaccinated, that we're going to continue to get in a better position in terms of illness numbers and in terms of opening, that the weather will get warmer, people will be able to socialize outside more in safer environments. The vaccine is coming along. We've had many people who've already had COVID and are now immune to it because they've already had the illness. And so I expect things are going to stabilize and get better. That's certainly my hope, although I can't guarantee anything. Obviously, we really missed the predictions about what would happen after the holidays. I am holding out great hope that we can have graduation in person. And so I want to acknowledge and appreciate Kerrigan Edelman and Dwayne Reese both working with me to try to keep our options open. We're really trying to delay the decision as long as we can, so we don't put out a lot of money and then have not be able to use the in-person graduation facilities. But we're working with the World Arena. We're trying really hard, and I'm really committed to, if there's any way possible, we're going to have an in-person graduation at the end of this semester. And imagine, if you will, the celebration, the students and you, all of us, who have persevered through this pandemic and some of the most challenging educational times of our lifetimes that we can even remember or imagine. And they've persevered, and what a celebration it will be if we can come together at the end of this semester in person and hold those students up in our collective accomplishment of helping them get to the finish line. Just another word about our health department. Again, I just think they're doing a phenomenal job. And one of the many things that they've done is they've set up testing centers all around our community. We have about a dozen different testing centers that are open. They're all low barrier, which means to them, there's no cost to get tested. You don't need a doctor's prescription. You simply drive up and say you need a test, and they test you right in your car, and you get the results back. Their effort is to try to get results back in 48 hours. They don't always have control over what's happening at the lab to process those tests, but they're doing a great job. And one of the things that some of you might not know is that our Rampart campus is a testing site. And so if you're uncomfortable about where to go or don't know where to go, Rampart Range campus is a testing site open from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. every day. And lastly, the challenge that I think is in front of us is to just maintain our diligence and our effort. We are all so tired of this, and the COVID fatigue is real, and I think it's really impacted us, and we're exhausted with the effort, but we're so close. So as you return to campus, what's really critical is that you maintain the great job you've already been doing and you have been doing, and that is an absolute fact. I'll share some data with you, but we've been doing a great job with our on-campus classes of minimizing transmission and opportunities for people to be sick. And just please, if you can hold on a few more months through this spring semester, especially the first half of spring semester, it will get better. But right now, we've got to continue with the masks. We've got to continue with the social distancing. So I just ask that you continue to do all the good things you've been doing. So a little bit of data, and I try to be really transparent with the campus about our data. We have had 234 cases associated with Pikes Peak Community College. So these 234 confirmed cases are a combination of students, faculty, and staff, some on campus, some off campus. I'll get into that here. So out of the 234, 138 were on campus cases. And you can see the majority of those were students, 98 were students, 17 staff, 4 faculty. And then we have a few that are still in process. But when I think about how we've done reporting and how we've done analysis, I have to start with acknowledging a huge thank you and kudos to doctors Donna Haynes and Maria Mesa. Dr. Haynes and Dr. Mesa just did a phenomenal job with creating from scratch a reporting system and a support system for our college and for our students who were reporting potential COVID positives and eventual confirmed COVID positives. One of the things you need to know is that of the 132 or 138 on-campus cases, we have many, many more that were not confirmed. So at any given time, especially during November, they might have been working literally hundreds of cases, some of which ended up being confirmed, some didn't. We ended up getting up to about 15% positivity rate, meaning that in the community, 15% of people tested were testing positive, but still 85% weren't. So one of the things that was happening for Donna and Maria is that as they worked these cases, they were putting in something close to 6 to 8 hours per case, whether some of them turned out negative or some of them turned out positive, because not only were they recording the cases and reporting to people who needed to know that they might have been exposed, but also they were trying to provide support to those students to help them navigate our systems and get the assistance that they need. And so just a tremendous job by both of you. Thank you. And also should recognize Valerie from HR also doing the same work for our employees. So we also had, in addition to the 138 on campus, we had 96 off campus cases. So these were people who are current students or current faculty members, but they were not on campus during a time that they might have been exposed to or infectious with COVID. And so we've had quite a lot of cases that we've had to process and track. But the really good news is we have very, very little on-campus transmission. And again, I think this is a testament to the phenomenally great job that our faculty was doing. 4 total outbreaks from Pikes Peak Community College during this time, totaling 12 people involved. And it's really hard to say exactly what was going on here, but if I pick out, for example, the Rampart Range campus biology students, a biology class, there were 2 students. They may have both brought community spread COVID to class and just coincidentally been in the same class, or there may have been a transmission in class. The health department is simply unable to determine that. And so they said, if there are 2 students in the same class, we're going to call it an outbreak. It might have been transmission on campus, but very well may have been community spread and just a coincidence that the 2 students were in the same class. But as you can see, we had very, very little transmission given the enormous numbers out in our community, tens of thousands of people infected. And we had at most 12 people who were involved in on-campus transmission, and it may have been less than that. So I just encourage you to keep doing the good job that you've been doing. We did so much adaptation, and one of the things that I just keep thinking about, and I want to go back to, was spring break of 2020 and what happened there. You know, I keep thinking about this story and how quickly this went. You know, one day I'm hearing on the radio news about an infectious disease that's going on in China, and that there are a lot of people that are being brought into these sort of makeshift hospitals because there are so many people sick. And it seemed so far away, so distant and remote. And then suddenly, almost overnight, it was on our doorstep. And some of the very first cases in the country were occurring in Colorado. People traveled to some of the ski towns in Colorado, and very quickly we began to realize there was going to be an impact on us. And I can remember being at a president's meeting and all the presidents and Chancellor Garcia talking about what was going on. And literally in one day we went from, in the morning, maybe we should put out some notices about what's going on and encourage people more to be careful, to wash their hands more, that kind of thing, to by the end of the same day, we were shutting down for 2 weeks and transitioning all of our classes to online. It was unbelievable how quickly we had to move and adapt. And what's even more incredible to me is the great job that our faculty did. In a 2-week period of time, you took all of our classes from on campus, all of the thousands of classes we had on campus, and transitioned those to remote and online instruction. I think about this, and I often think that if this had been a project that the General Assembly, our legislature, had passed a law and said we had to do this, and probably would have taken us 3 or 4 years to do this, to go through all the processes and figure things out, and you just did it. And not only did you do it, but you did it in such a way that our students were able to persist and continue to succeed. And not just our faculty, but I also want to recognize across the whole college, advising and student services and our physical plant staff, our facilities folks, and everyone made the adaptations that they had to. And we've managed to keep the machinery of the college moving, keep people getting paid, keep our processes happening, our buildings in good shape so that we can return to college, to classes. And so over the course of this period, we've done some surveying, notably during fall semester, reached out in collaboration with Faculty Senate, and I asked faculty for feedback on different teaching platforms, remote platforms, and the feedback was very clear that faculty do not want to move to a single platform, that different platforms really support different disciplines well. And the case being made that it's not terribly difficult to move from WebEx to Zoom to other things, and that there are some very good reasons to support multiple platforms out there. So we took the decision to do that. We will be maintaining these platforms. So I've gotten questions a couple of times about maybe some of the contracts are coming up and are we going to maintain those? We absolutely are. I think those are built into our system in a permanent way now, that remote learning in some form or fashion may always be how we continue to operate. We also talk to students a lot, and we've got a lot of feedback from them. And I want to acknowledge some real learning for myself. As we went into the pandemic, I was very focused, as I tend to be, on So tangible things that we could do that would help students. And so I got very focused on feedback and ideas from my team about what we should do around getting computers out to people and getting Wi-Fi access to people, and was really concerned about that. And there was some reason to do that. But actually, when we looked at our data, although this says adequate technology, 76%, it doesn't include kind of a middle group. We actually had about 8% of our students who said that technology was a real problem for them, a real barrier for them. But far more students talked about intangible issues, which was a surprise to me and really a learning for me. So limited opportunities for hands-on experience and group activities, the challenge of staying motivated while you're really isolated physically from the college and your peers and your faculty members, not being able to ask questions and get direct and immediate feedback and see your faculty members face. A lot of the questions became something that was happening, through writing over time, where students were asking questions on a chat format and then getting responses later. And of course, so many of our students struggled with fitting in the course with home and family and work responsibilities. Families were thrown into so much chaos. And so it turned out that the biggest challenges our students faced, and they were resounding in this response to us in the survey, were really these intangible issues around staying motivated and staying connected and dealing with the chaos in their homes. And technology was important, but not as much as we thought. You did just a tremendous job as faculty and support staff like our Learning Commons, helping students stay on track. These results are amazing to me, really amazing. And so when I look at what happened, we had a pass rate that was within 1% of what we did last fall. A failure rate, course failure rate decreased by 0.2%. Withdrawals up just a little bit, incompletes up just a little bit. But when I look at this data, I believe almost no change between fall of 2020. This is fall of 2020 and fall of 2019. Got our labels mixed up here, but this is 19 being compared to 20. And so this is truly a testament to faculty adapting your learning styles, adapting to the online and remote environment, to the Learning Commons and other student support systems, stepping up, to our coaches and the good work you did, that we were able to help students who return to college really stay on track and be successful as they always have been. One of the examples of a department in an area that adapted to the pandemic and really changed some of their processes is the foundation. And one of the things that they did is they normally have a process of one opening and an awarding of scholarships per semester. And they did 3 this semester, and that is not trivial. The process is very involved. It involves advertising that the scholarship opportunity is available, helping students get their scholarship applications in, reviewing those scholarship applications, and then making awards and matching up the amount of money we have to the amount of awards, and then making sure that those awards are accepted. And then what the foundation ended up doing is they ended up going through that process 3 times. One of the things that drove that was we did have a lot of students who simply didn't return. And so sometimes scholarships were awarded but not accepted. But the foundation put out during fall semester $1.3 million in scholarships. And I have this kind of fun image in my head of literally dump trucks of student anxiety being taken away and driven down the road and dropped off in a dump. That so much anxiety would have been lifted from these students because of the funding support that they got from the foundation. And the foundation also got 50 computers out to help students connect with the technology. What's really cool about what the foundation did and the adaptations they made is also that they began down this path of how to be anti-racist. And every time I say that word, I note that I'm a little bit triggered, and I expect there are others in the listening audience that are as well. But when I talk about anti-racist, I'm really talking about it in the framework of Ibram Kendi and his book about how to be an anti-racist. So I want to remind you that in his book and his definition, and we gave that book out to the college, you might remember, after fall PDW, and had hundreds of people who took me up on it, and I hope you read it and enjoyed it. I've read the book a couple of times. I've read it and I've listened to the audio. I would say that much of the book I agree with. There are parts of the book I don't agree with, but I really strongly foundationally agree with the central tenet, which is about anti-racism, meaning that anti-racism is an effort to focus on practices and policies that have a disproportionate negative impact on communities of color. And for my purposes and our college's purposes, I've expanded that to say on communities of color, low income, and first generation students. And so it's really important when we talk about anti-racism to realize that this is not a pejorative or judgmental term about people. It is about policies and practices that have a disproportionate negative impact. And the foundation realized that they had policies and practices that they could change to become more anti-racist in their operations. So they opened up and have greatly expanded the time frame within which people can apply for scholarships. And what they realized is that when they were doing scholarship application windows that were 6 or 8 months before classes started, that those might serve well second and third generation college students, but for people who didn't know how college worked, they have no idea that they needed to be applying for scholarships many months before classes started. And so they've changed their processes to really open up that aperture and allow people to apply for apply for scholarships within a much broader time. And I really applaud those efforts. This is exactly the kind of practice and policy. This is how we've always done it. But then we take a look at it and say, is this having a disproportionate negative impact? And if it is, let's make some changes. And kudos to the foundation for making those changes. Also want to recognize, related to the foundation, our new student ombudsperson, Sarah Catanza. And Sarah remains the scholarship coordinator with the foundation. But what a great boon to the college to have Sarah stepping into this role. I want to say a little bit about her background, because many of you may not know, and she tends to be very modest in terms of how she presents herself and doesn't go around talking about this all the time. But Sarah, in this ombuds role, she'll represent the college as a neutral party when students have issues. Often those issues might be with citizenship or financial aid processes or all sorts of different things. Some might be academic, of students on academic suspension, that sort of thing. But here's Sarah's background. Before joining Pikes Peak Community College, she worked as a human rights attorney with the Human Rights Commission in Uganda. She holds an executive MBA from the University of Denver and a Master of Law and Public Interest Law from New York University School of Law. She also trained as an alternative dispute resolution legal professional with the International Development Law Institute in Rome. And we are so fortunate to have such a talented person in this role. And so if you have students who are HERO students or who are in need of support in navigating issues here at the college, Sarah is here to help serve them. Thank you, Sarah. We had a lot of innovation that went on over fall semester, really the end of spring through the summer and fall. And I just want to acknowledge what a great job we did with these. And we learned a lot of things that I think will permanently impact how the college operates. Commencement was a huge success, a virtual commencement. It's not where we want to be. We don't want to have just a virtual commencement, but maybe we will always have some form of broadcasting the commencement, because what we found out is we had more people view that commencement that was virtual than we ever had attend the actual graduation. And the team that put this together, Kerrigan, Edelman, Warren Epstein in marketing, and others who were involved in this, they just did a phenomenal job of really honoring the work our students had done to get to graduation through that virtual commencement. I want to note that Student Life has done a great job of really reaching out to and helping students stay connected to the college. The drive-in family movie nights, I understand those were selling out in like under 24 hours and were incredibly popular. And you did such a great job with them. It wasn't just a drive-in movie at the Rampart campus, but there was live music outside, and it was really a great chance for us to create a sense of community and belonging and caring for our students. Thank you, Student Life, for the great job you've done with that. Service awards and scholarship events also just really phenomenally done. I would say that the scholarship event that the foundation put on this year, we hired some help, and we got really innovative with how we integrated different types of media together. One of the best events we've done, and we've gotten really strong positive feedback from people who were able to attend that event. Great job there. Jingle Mingle, I want to say Fran Velasquez, Warren Epstein, others, people who were involved in this. I thought, oh, you know, an online Zoom Christmas party, who wants to do that? You know, we're all in Zoom meetings all day, but they really did a great job. They made it fun, they made it happy, they made it a chance for us to come together and celebrate one another in the end of the year and have some holiday spirit. Fran, great job with that. I appreciate you. Thank you. The seed trainings that Regina Lewis has been putting on, and a lot of great support from Keith Barnes in those as well. They've been a bit of a real epiphany about how online training can work and operate. One of the things I think we're seeing in these seed trainings is more courageous conversations than ever, because sometimes maybe it's easier to put that comment or that thought in chat rather than having to say it live in person in front of a lot of other people. And so the seed trainings, and I was able to attend the virtual seed training, the seed 3 training during fall semester, and just fantastic communication and dialogue and courageous conversation going on there. So thank you all. The Cultivate Professional Development work, Ashley Dutton, that you're doing, thank you for keeping the ball rolling. I'm going to talk a little bit more about your work later, but you've done a phenomenal job keeping people on track with the professional development plans that you've built. And finally, I want to talk about the arts presentation. It's called Still Moving, and Still Moving is still available on our website. And it's an opportunity that our arts faculty took to really help students showcase their talents and the power of the instruction that they had participated in through this semester. So they were worried and concerned, and rightly so, that there would be no place for our students to demonstrate their talents and what they had learned in music and visual arts and dance and theater. And so they came together and put together this incredible program called Still Moving, where you can, from wherever you are, whenever you want to, see the art gallery and do a tour with Rowena of our art gallery, or see the theater productions, or see dance productions that Stephanie's students have put together. And they just did a phenomenal job. And the music is always just incredible and beautiful. Thank you, Gail and William, for your contributions to that. I was so glad that students had a venue and a format which they could show their creativity and their ability. So thank you for putting that together. You know, we had a lot of things wash over our community and our nation this year. There was the upheaval and the battering of our democracy that I talked about at the beginning, and there was COVID and the pandemic, and there was the murder of George Floyd, and the racial reckoning that has swept across our country, and a great tsunami as well. And what I want to say about this is just with what happened at the Capitol last week, and just as with the pandemic, there is a role for our college. We have a part of this national story. We have a responsibility around this, and I want us to make sure that we're recognizing that and going forward with that. So when I think about what happened, what I think about is what is Pikes Peak's place in this? What is our part of this story? What do we do? And so there is a lot that we do. There are the trainings and the work that Keith and Regina are doing out there. There's a lot of work going on in the instructional side that I'll share with you. But fundamentally, there is this challenge before us: equity in outcomes. That's the challenge for us. You know, I would submit to you that we have equality in the entrance of our college. Anybody can come and sign up for classes at our college. We're open enrollment. So anybody in our community can come and sign up for classes, and they do. We have people from all walks of life who come to our college pursuing some dream, pursuing some improvement for themselves. And so we have this equality of process of entering our college, but we do not have equity of outcomes coming out of our college. And that is the fundamental challenge that we face. And what's important to recognize about that is that students are coming to us from different places. Some are coming to us exceptionally well prepared to be successful as college students, and some are not. And I'm going to say something here, might be a bit controversial, but I'm just going to put it out there because I think it's time for it to be said. That when we think about K-12 education through the lens of Ibram Kendi's work on anti-racism, I would submit to you that K-12 funding in Colorado is, by his definition, racist. There is a disproportionate negative impact on communities of color, low-income and first-generation students. And here's the basis of that. It is property tax funded K-12. So our K-12 systems are largely funded by property tax distributions. And what that means is that wealthy parts of our community have a lot more money to work with than low-income parts of our community. And you could spend a lot of time on this. You could do an investigative journalism piece on this, or a deep investigation, deep dive, and you could really look at the dollars per pupil and what's happening with the distributions based on property taxes. But you don't have to do all that. You can do a drive-by and you can see it. Drive by Cheyenne Mountain High School and then drive by Harrison High School. And think about the differences that you see. They're obvious and apparent right there. And there are lots of other examples. We could compare District 20 high schools to District 11 high schools, and we see the same kinds of things. And what I tell you is that doing that drive-by and looking at those buildings and the facilities that they have, and it doesn't just apply to high schools, it applies to middle schools too. Take a look at Carmel Middle School and then drive by Cheyenne Mountain Junior High. The differences are dramatic and stark. But that is a perfect analogy around that is the iceberg. What you see doing your drive-by is the tip of the iceberg. You see what's visible and easy to see, but what you don't see is the enrichment opportunities that students are exposed to within those schools. So wealthy schools are able to offer field trips and guest speakers and special enrichment classes. Those things don't happen in our low-income schools. And so we have a difference in school preparation that comes from the students that come to us from Colorado Springs area high schools. And it might not seem fair, but it is our job to rectify those differences and to meet those students where they are and help them be successful. So our efforts have been going on for many years. I believe in my very first PDW talk at Pikes Peak, I talked about achievement gaps. And since then, we've been at times very slowly, at other times more rapidly, growing in our speed and our efforts. And this year, I would say we've really maintained our progress and our efforts. And I'm really proud of that through the pandemic. I'll acknowledge that there have been people who've been very frustrated with me around the diversity, equity, and inclusion work, because I have strongly resisted a lot of rigid structural organization, saying this person will be in charge of this and this person will do this and only this person. And I've really resisted that because rigid structure to me seemed antithetical to inclusion, which is one of the things that we wanted to accomplish. I wanted to be able to encourage people wherever they are to get involved and have an impact within their sphere of influence. I think what's happened over the years of doing this and allowing and encouraging this organic growth of our diversity efforts and our anti-racism efforts is that we've sort of created what now feels like a natural organization rather than a top-down president declares this is the organization we're going to use. And I really am grateful for that. And what's emerged over time is the instructional services focused on classroom equity. And we know that is a huge opportunity for us. That within our classrooms, we have the ability to create more equitable experiences. When we look at our student data from Pikes Peak Community College, we know that we have achievement gaps between students of color and white students. We also know that there are a lot of studies and a lot of data out there showing that these can be eliminated. I'd say that Community College of Aurora, right here in our state, just it's a short hop up the highway, is really accomplishing this and has all but eliminated achievement gaps between students of color and white students. And I just want to make sure you understand, all students at Community College of Aurora increased in their success rates, but students of color increased even more to catch up with their white peers. And so there's an instructional services core equity team that is working on this. It's an effort that's going to have, so our two prongs. One is going to be very focused on our data, looking at data from a college level, a division level, a department level, and even a faculty level. And it's really important that we see where we are operating. And when we do this, the effort around the data is not going to be to beat people up or to criticize people. It's going to be to give them the information they need to be more successful. And alongside that will be a lot of professional development training and looking at the best practices and the practices that have been used to eliminate achievement gaps and talk about how we can incorporate those into our classrooms. Simultaneous and parallel and equally important to that effort is the anti-racism effort being led by Special Assistant to the President to me, Regina Lewis and Keith Barnes. And they are doing a tremendous job with this work. Keith just kicked off a process last week to look at our employee hiring practices and training practices, but especially our hiring practices. We've been talking about hiring a more diverse workforce that looks like our student body for years, but we haven't made a lot of progress. I think we know what the answers are. I think we know what a lot of the solutions are, but we've got to get those really built into our practices. So to me, hiring is one of those examples where there's a difference between policy and practice. Policy is very clear about what we do and that we have no bias, no racial bias in our hiring practices, in our hiring policy, but in our practices, it appears that we do, because we continue to really struggle to hire more people of color to make our workforce look more like our student body. But they are looking at the entire college around anti-racism policies and practices. And think about the example of the foundation. That's exactly what we're looking for. And so through courageous conversations that they are leading, we can help departments across the college look at their processes. Regina and Keith, they can't do all that work. They don't understand, and none of us do, your department and your area the way that you do. You understand those details best. So the solutions have to come from you, but we're here to support you with training, with inspirational speakers, with a guiding light of this is where we're heading. And so I encourage you, wherever you are, to engage with this and think about how practices and policies in your area might be changed or impacted to create a greater level of anti-racism at our college. Police reform is yet another national scope conversation where Pikes Peak Community College has an important role. We have a law enforcement academy, and we've trained cadets to go out and be police officers, and we've trained a lot of good police officers who are serving all over Colorado and even in other states. And a lot of good work has gone on there, and it might be time for us to look at our curriculum and make determinations about whether there are opportunities for improvement. So the Colorado Health Foundation awarded to the community college system $1 million grant to fund and provide resources for an analysis of our curriculum and an updating of our curriculum. I think they're very focused on making sure that we have sufficient amount of work in de-escalation and empathy built into our curriculums. And so very grateful for the Health Foundation's grant, and all of the law enforcement academies across the state are working together on this. Kathy Lebrecht and Gary Howard from Pikes Peak Community College are involved, but all of the law enforcement academies are involved, and they're working with the Attorney General's office. The Attorney General's office oversees something called POST, which sets the hiring and training standards for police officers in Colorado. Locally, Pikes Peak Community College is also working on something called the Empathy Project using virtual reality. And if you haven't worked with virtual reality, I really encourage you to take any opportunity you have to do that. It is an incredibly immersive and powerful technology. And so the idea of the Empathy Project is pretty simple. It is to allow law enforcement academy cadets and police officers to experience life from someone else's perspective. In particular, to experience an interaction with police from someone else's perspective. And really, that is the heart of empathy. Empathy is about seeing the world from another person's eyes. And the virtual reality empathy project is really about using technology to promote a powerful opportunity for people to see the world from another person's eyes. I'm going to switch gears a little bit and just talk about some of our college data. If you're new to these presentations, I try to provide information on a number of key metrics, sort of going back to the same metrics every semester, looking at our progress and what's happening and reporting those in a really transparent way by just staying really consistent with the reporting. I want to start with enrollment, and as you can see, we took a pretty big hit from the pandemic in terms of our enrollment. Fall semester, we ended up being down 9.7%. We'd actually projected to be down 10%. So we're in pretty good shape there. Spring semester, we had projected to be down 5%. We had imagined back when we set these numbers that this pandemic would be over by now and that we would be getting back to normal operations by spring. And of course, that's not quite where we are. So today we're down about we're down exactly 14.7%. I expect that by the beginning of classes, we'll be around 10% down. So we're going to miss the projection, I think, in terms of enrollment numbers, but I would say that the mix of enrollment is different than we projected as well. So as most of you know, tuition for online classes is higher than normal on-campus classes. So if the students are signing up for online classes at higher rates, which they are, the revenue impact, we expect that we're going to be right on target in terms of that. And so that's just good news. I want to give you that, I want to say that the mix of online versus on-campus enrollments is going to help make up for the enrollment shortage, and we're going to be on budget and be okay there. And there is some more good financial news that I'll be sharing in a few moments. Well, this used to be my favorite slide. For years, this was my favorite slide. I was absolutely astounded by our college's continued success. Well, that's not quite right. I wasn't astounded that we were succeeding, but I was astounded at the progress we were able to make and the commitment of people across our school who made this possible. You know, from 2011, where we started a retention rate of 47.3, and we increased every single year through 2019 to 55 point, I'm just going to call that 56% fall to fall retention. And that put us among the best large urban community colleges in the nation. And obviously the pandemic had a big effect. And so it knocked us down by about 10%. We went from 56% to 46%. And there's a story here that is really important. And the story behind this is that a lot of students chose either not to enroll in college to begin with. That's one of the reasons our enrollment is down. Or they chose to not continue to enroll because they didn't feel like they could be successful in this environment. And it turns out they could have been, but they didn't believe that. And so what's troubling about it in particular, and you'll see this in some data I'm about to present, is that low-income first generation and students of color were the ones who were most impacted, who were most likely not to continue in college or not to enroll to begin with. And so getting hit with a 10% drop, when I think about that, what really concerns me are who are the students who chose not to return. And by and large, that group that chose not to return were students of color and low-income first-generation students. So when we look at our retention rate by race and ethnicity, you can see this clearly. White students stayed right on the 56%, right where we were last year. But our Black student population dropped down to 45%, and that's really troubling. I do want to note that Hispanic enrollment, we had a 5-year goal of getting to 25% Hispanic enrollment. We felt like the demographics of the high schools that we serve across our service territory supported that goal and made that goal achievable. We're not there yet, but we have made significant increases, and we are at 21% right now. Here's some pretty happy news. I'm really thrilled with this. Our graduation numbers for 2019-20, the year of the pandemic, we had 3,879 graduates. So one of the other things that we can take from this data is that students who were close to graduation, they persisted and continued. You know, we were just below where we were last year. Last year, for the first time ever, we eclipsed 4,000 degrees and certificates awarded. This year, I'm just thrilled with how close we were to that, and the fact that so many students, with your help, were able to persist and graduate. This is the most troubling data that I have to share with you today, and I hope you're as troubled by this data as I am today, because I find this very motivating. I want to begin by, just in case we have people new to us who are part of this call, and I know just last week I had a chance to talk to New Faculty Academy, so I know there are a lot of new folks out there. If you're new to community colleges, these graduation rates are actually, our goal is 25%, and that's a pretty darn good number for a large urban community college, and we've been hitting that number. There are a couple of things that really knock graduation rates down at community colleges, and we've studied these a lot. We understand them, we know them. One is that many students come to our colleges and transfer on to a 4-year institution before they graduate. So that there are thousands of those each year at Pikes Peak, and that literally just really knocks down our graduation rates. The other area that we've really studied as a system and tried to understand are people that we call skill builders. Skill builders are students who enroll at Pikes Peak Community College or any community college to gain a particular skill without any intention or effort towards actually earning a degree or certificate. And this is perfectly fine. This is us accomplishing our mission in our community, but students often come to perhaps learn a computer programming language, or to learn CAD drawing, or to learn a welding skill. And when we've tracked these students over time, we found that they have increases in compensation after they learn these skills. And this is us accomplishing our mission, but it's part of the reason that our graduation rates look so different than what you might see at, for example, a 4-year liberal arts college that might be at 90%. We just serve a very different population. But what's really troubling about this data is, of course, the disparity that we see based on race. And this is our work. This is our challenge. This is why so much time and effort and talk is going into closing achievement gaps and dealing with what you see here. This is, for none of us should this be successful. I'm sorry, no one on this call, for none of us should this be acceptable. This is deeply troubling and says to us that we still have a lot of work to do. And we have resources to do it, and we are willing to make the investments necessary to get us where we need to be, to close those achievement gaps, to have all students with equity and outcomes from our college. If you take a look at our reserves, and I always report on our reserves, I think it's very important to give you a picture of where the college is. We went from around $40 million reserves in FY18 to about 31 million this year. We have made some big investments as a college that have pushed our reserves down. So in particular, the big investment in the Center for Healthcare Education and Simulation, our medical campus up north. We bought that building. We made a big investment in renovating that building and remodeling it. We're about halfway through with that project for the medical campus purposes. I think it is serving us extremely well, and I'm really looking forward to phase 2. We also made a big investment in taking the building we own downtown and turning it into Studio West. And so Studio West is a great addition, and I can't wait to do a public grand opening of Studio West. It is a gorgeous, beautiful space, and the architects and designers and faculty members who were involved in that design really deserve a lot of kudos. It's beautifully done. And I hope by the end of the semester, we might be able to do a public opening of that building. We're already using it. We just haven't been able to have people together in a big grand opening. But I'm very comfortable with where we are with our reserves. As the pandemic hit, I was very glad that we had strong reserves, and we knew that we had the financial resources we needed to take care of our people. And that's what we did. We put construction projects on hold, and we made sure that we could take care of our people, that we didn't end up in layoff situations where people were getting hurt at the college. Well, what's next is a lot is next, and I'm going to try to hit this briefly and give you a sense of what some of this is. Many of you know that CCC Online is in the midst of a big transition. What that transition is going to look like, we don't quite know yet, but here are the drivers. Chancellor Garcia and the presidents agree on these drivers, and we think they're really critical. And one is that we need to be in a better place in terms of accountability for the courses on CCC Online for accreditation purposes. So we're awarding credit for these CCC Online courses at Pikes Peak Community College, but we don't have authority over those courses, and that's troubling to HLC and has been troubling to many of you faculty members as well. The other driver is that Chancellor Garcia is very concerned about competition, especially from for-profits coming into our state, really looking for opportunities to build and grow their business, and charging students a lot of money while we're sort of sitting over here not doing maybe what we could to really grow online enrollments. And so he's particularly focused on ensuring that there are complete degree programs that are available online, and that students wherever they are in the state have the ability to access those. Fundamentally, I think a lot of CCC Online is going to come back to our colleges, that we will have greater autonomy and greater involvement in CCC Online. I do not expect any decrease in resourcing for online education at Pikes Peak. In fact, just the opposite, likely an increase. I'm on the steering committee for this next phase of CCC Online. We have not even had our first meeting, so I'm not going to speculate a lot about the nuts and bolts of what all this looks like. Josh Baker, Dr. Baker, is also on a working committee for the transition. I think our Faculty Senate President, Deidre Schoolcraft, has been very involved in conversations from SDAC, talking about the changes as well. So I think we're well represented in this process. More of you will likely be recruited. I think it's a good change and a good process, but it does create some anxiety as we think about what different operating method is going to look like for CCC Online. I think it's going to change names too, by the way, but not clear yet what that new name will be. Well, the legislative session is also really changing and of course will impact us as it always does. Normally the legislative session would be starting, I think, today, and what's actually going to happen is this week they will open up, they'll do a bit of quick business, and then they're going to shut down until the last week of February, and then they'll open back up. I think they're hoping by the last week of February that many people can be vaccinated if they want to be, and that they can get to the people's business and operate in basically sort of a normal fashion from then. And I think they'll be able to get the state's work done in that compressed time. What's really important about the legislative session to me, and I said I had more good financial news, and this is one of the other pieces. I want to remind you last year that when the legislature was in session and they were trying to put together the budget, higher ed got cut by 54%, unprecedented cut. No history of anything like that in our state. I'll acknowledge that we got backfilled with, mostly backfilled with federal dollars from the CARES Act, but the cut was enormous to higher ed. And we were all very anxious about what this year might look like. And the good news is that the governor's budget, which he put forth in November, as the governor always does in Colorado, it restores 2019-2020 level of funding for Pikes Peak. And so, or for higher ed in general, including Pikes Peak, of course. And so we were, I'll say that was better than I hoped for. And I was just thrilled that we were able to get that level of funding, given that it's a Democratic governor's budget put forth to a Democratic House and a Democratic Senate in Colorado. I am very optimistic that the governor will get his budget passed pretty much intact as he put it together. I think he has a lot of support from the legislature, as long as we don't have another revenue free fall like we experienced last year, and I don't think we will. So I think we can be pretty optimistic about that. Beyond that, I really don't know yet what kind of bills might be introduced that we'll either be fighting or supporting, but as always, I'm sure there will be many. Just a reminder for faculty in particular that CETL has been working hard to support you, as has HIPS as well. I want to say both HIPS and CETL, their organizations have provided a lot of training for online instruction and remote instruction. In particular, what CETL is doing right now is they have put some resources to help you as an online instructor or a remote instructor into D2L, and that's available on the Discover tab. And so make sure to take a look at those resources, as well as connect to our workshops that are going on this week. So I would speak about Ashley Dutton's work, and I just couldn't say enough about what a great job Ashley has done. I think she is really promoting and developing leaders at our college and is doing a fantastic job with that. Most recently, she has put out a process and system by which you can engage in professional development training and earn digital badges here at Pikes Peak. And so she's got 6 different areas. They include effective communication and customer service, diversity and leadership, ethics, compliance and risk management, team building and networking, skills education and technology, and health and wellness. In all of these 6 areas, she'll be coordinating training opportunities. When you attend these trainings, you accumulate sort of points that then count towards earning these badges. There's more information online about how this works. What I would tell you about it is if you're interested in professional growth and moving up, whether it's at Pikes Peak, another college or university, or even a business, taking the initiative to grow your own skills and abilities and demonstrating that through processes like she has created, I think is a really telling sign for employers. And so I would really encourage you to take these opportunities and develop yourself and show that initiative. in areas that you're interested in and you want to grow and develop in. And I think we all know, everybody that's experienced them, that the training programs Ashley has put together have been nothing but first rate. And so you can look forward to a great experience with those. The new CARES Act funding, which is called the Corona Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act, was voted in by the U.S. Congress, the U.S. House and the Senate, and signed by the President a couple of weeks ago, and it is effective as of January 5th, 2021. And there's some really good financial news in this act as well for us. In the last CARES Act, passed back in, I think, late March, early April, there were a couple of decisions that were made in that act that actually had a pretty negative impact on community colleges. One was that the fund distribution was based on FTE, so full-time equivalents. And that made it really hard for us to support students, many of our students, as well as we could have, because over half of our students are part-time. So one of the differences, and I think Congress really listened to us, and I'm grateful for that, is that this round of funding will be based on headcount, not FTE. That means that we'll get a lot more resources to help our students who we know are, on average, the neediest, those most in need in our nation. We also really campaigned for greater flexibility in terms of using the dollars. And I think that was heard as well. And so, you know, they wrote in restrictions last time that said things like, if you were an online student, you were ineligible to receive any of the funding. And I know those kinds of things are gone, as they should be. That was a real detriment to us in terms of helping our students. Last time we got about $7 million, roughly speaking. About half of that was connected to direct aid for students, and about half of it was for the institution. We estimate, we don't know yet, we haven't seen the numbers yet, but Dwayne and I have been talking, Dwayne Reese and I have been talking, as well as the finance leadership at the system office. We think we might be as high as $12 million this year. Could be, you know, we're not sure yet, but we think it's going to be around that number. That's going to give us an opportunity to really do some great things in terms of helping our students with direct aid and emergency grants and scholarships, as well as helping our institution continue to make investments in technology to support our mission. And so just really pleased to be able to share that news with you. I think we'll know, and we'll have the money, and we'll have the exact details of what this is going to look like by around the end of January, first week of February, and we are going to move with great speed to get that money out to our students and help our students stay in school and on track this semester. Just a note too, I talked about our K-12 partners a little bit earlier and the disparities in funding. And one of the things that we know is that our students coming to us in the coming year and years, they're going to be impacted by the pandemic. Many of our students may have lost a year or more of educational opportunity because of the pandemic. We know, unfortunately, that the impacts have been greatest on, I know I sound like a broken record, but it's absolutely true, communities of color, first generation, and low-income students. Wealthy students were able to find different ways of enrichment and different ways of engagement. Our low-income students, many of them just stopped showing up at school, just disappeared from schools. And it's been incredibly difficult for our K-12 partners to continue to serve those students well. Keith Barnes brought this up, and I acknowledge what a great job and what a good thinker Keith is for us. And he talked about that we ought to be thinking about this and looking at how we respond to this, make sure that we're ready for those students to come and that we're student ready for them, that we're ready to serve them and help them be successful as they come to Pikes Peak in the coming year or years. And so we're thinking about coaching, we're thinking about expanding AAA. And I just want to acknowledge what a great job Barb and Barb, you guys do with AAA. the results are consistent and remarkable around the positive impact on students from AAA. We think we've still got a lot of work to do with co-recs and math pathways, making sure that we get students into the right math class. This is all connected and linked together to that first year success for students. I think it's linked together as well with anti-racist policies and practices, making sure that we get students into the right classes. We have too many students still who are taking college algebra, who historically might be more successful in a different math course, a Math 120 quantitative literacy or a statistics course. And so I've asked leadership from Math and English to really continue pushing on this, to really continue working on this, that all departments have a role in this to make sure that we're getting students into the math classes that make the most sense for their degree programs. If a student is not on a journey to calculus, they really should not be taking college algebra. College algebra is by and large and nationally recognized, and a lot of research on this. The role of college algebra is primarily to prepare students for calculus. Otherwise, if you're not on that path, courses like quantitative literacy and statistics are a better option. I'm just so proud of our college and so grateful to the team here for keeping our progress moving, for not getting shut down and locked out of progress by this pandemic. We started 5 new program areas during fall of 2020. I think that's just incredible, and just tremendous kudos to faculty involved in this and leaders involved in this. A new AGS in secure coding, that's Associate of General Studies, Associate of General Studies in hospitality, AGS in emergency management and planning. We started up new certified addiction counseling courses, and we started a vet assistant program. I could not believe we made that much progress in this crazy semester, and I'm just really proud of our college for that. Also in development, soon to be operational, are vet tech, physical therapy assistant, and the program in facilities and industrial maintenance. I want to say a word about this last one. Construction tends to be an area that is very volatile and goes through big swings. Right now, construction is really on a high, but in a few years, we all know, because it's a cyclical industry, that there will be busts in construction and difficult times there. But one of the things that tends to be really consistent is building maintenance and facilities upkeep. And so as our construction students and students interested in that field build both skills in construction, but also facilities management, that's going to put them in a really great position to ride through the economic ups and downs of their industry. The Quad partnership continues to be very strong, and I'm really proud of the work going on here. Last year, we got a grant from the Colorado Health Foundation to work on public trust, and it was really an outgrowth of this racial reckoning that I talked about that swept across our country. And it was particularly focused on trust between communities of color in Colorado Springs and institutions like our police department, our sheriff's department, our city government, our public health departments. And so students from the Quad program, which is of course a collaboration between UCCS, Air Force Academy, Colorado College, and Pikes Peak Community College. Students from all 4 programs are involved in these projects, and they did just tremendous work. I was privileged to be able to sit in on a Zoom meeting where our students reported out to Police Chief Niski and his top lieutenants, top leadership from the city and county governments and public health, all sat in a meeting and listened to our students talk about this very, very important work. Our PPCC students just absolutely shone there. They were shining stars in that report out. More than one person reached out to me afterwards and said, I am so impressed with your students. Every time I hear Quad teams talk, Pikes Peak Community College students are the shining examples in that. And of course, a lot of our students are living the experience of these trust breaches within our community that make relationships between our low-income communities of color and our institutions very difficult. And so I just want to continue to encourage you to encourage students to get involved in the quad. What I see are continued life-changing experiences where students get to work on these remarkable teams with top leaders across our community and really and truly make a difference. And this leadership project, this trust project that I just talked about is receiving additional funding, quite a bit of additional funding, and a lot of statewide interest in terms of what police can do, for example, to build greater trust in communities. So I'm really proud of that work. I'm really proud of our students. And so if you encourage students to get involved, all they have to do is they can type in Google Quad Colorado Springs, and the quad has a website. It'll come up. There's a button they click on that says students apply. You apply here. We've kept the quad going and fully functional through the pandemic. They've been doing most of their work virtually. Also want to remind you that students get paid for being involved in the quad. So compensation is around $1,200 per semester. That's the dollars, but the learning opportunity and the changes and empowerment that they experience is really priceless. So please, if you haven't done it recently, the quad relies on your recommendations to students to get involved. A few facilities updates. These are pretty much all facility control maintenance dollars, projects, money that we were given from the state for specific projects. Emergency generator going in here at Centennial Campus. That's the kind of the final piece of a really big and really needed electrical upgrade for these buildings at Centennial. If you've been to the Centennial Campus, you know the walkways outside that go along above ground level are being completely redone. That's going to be beautiful when it's done, but right now it's a bit of a pain. Downtown studio, we've got the fire sprinkler project going on, and I think they've been doing a great job of really kind of minimizing any negative impact on offices and classrooms. The gym is being remodeled, in particular new floor going in there that will really beautify that space, make it more functional. If you've spent time at Centennial Campus, you know how much the restroom upgrades are needed, and those are happening. We'll be upgrading Aspen building this year, primarily doing phase 2 of Breckenridge building next year. Upcoming projects that we are still committed to: Downtown Studio Learning Commons. Now that we've been able to move into Studio West, we're really eager to get going on the Learning Commons there. We think that's a critical component of helping the Downtown Studio campus really make a strong enrollment comeback. Part of it is the facilities, part of it is scheduling and programming, but we have work to do there. Our downtown in Colorado Springs is just booming and thriving and growing, and we need to be part of that. And I'm eager for Pikes Peak Community College to really have a strong presence downtown and serve that community well. We're not sure when the other 2 projects are going to be kicked off, but one is the Free Complex. That's the First Responder Emergency Education Complex. And it consists of a burn tower and a driving track and some upgraded facilities for our police department and law enforcement academy as well. I presented this project at the Capital Development Committee and got very, very positive feedback. I was really impressed and surprised and thankful for such positive feedback, mostly when you present these projects to the legislators at the Capital Development Committee. They listen politely and they say, thank you very much, next, and thank you very much, and next. And I actually got a lot of questions and a lot of very positive engagement. That's the good news. Bad news is the state didn't really have any capital money this year. And so we will keep pushing this forward. And I am cautiously optimistic that we will eventually get this funded. It may take a few years before the state has the money. It's a big project. It's a $25 million ask, but I think it's something that can really serve our college as well as Southern Colorado very well. And finally, there's the CTE building. We had that really lined up and ready to go. We were going to have a student vote in April of last year to pass a bond to fund the construction of this building. And the pandemic just put all of that on hold. So we stepped back from that. And at this point, I think we have some questions about how strongly students will come back to campus. We know that students prefer on-campus instruction, but will there be students coming out of this pandemic who really prefer remote and online? Will we have changes in our brick and mortar sort of space needs at our college? Yet to be determined. And so stay tuned. We're going to continue to study this and think about it, whether to bring this back. And if we bring it back, do we make modifications to the plans? Don't know yet. Really want to see what the student vote is and how they vote with their feet and their dollars in terms of how they want to be educated. We are starting to work on CHES Phase 2. So basically that's primarily the second floor of this building, and it will host a number of new programs and give them room to grow, and as well as just really first-rate space. So moving in will be pharma tech and medical assisting, physical therapy technician. I know I'm forgetting a couple, but that's that renovation. We are starting that process back up. We're also going to be doing some renovation at the Rampart campus to really increase space and facilities for dental assisting as well as nursing assistant program there. So stay tuned. We expect and hope that we might be able to restart this construction and complete the investment we have at the medical campus there by this summer. So we're thinking that we might start making noise and dust again up there by this summer. And with that, that concludes. Boy, I think I'm right on time. We scheduled an hour and a half. I'm always astounded at my ability to go on and on in these addresses, although there is just so much happening at the college. And I know our time is up, but I am going to just ask Warren, are there a couple of areas or themes where we have questions that I might address?
Yes, I think we've had more comments and questions than ever before, and really a great presentation. And I want to give a kudos to our IT staff for your better camera and microphone. Dr. Bolton, you'd never look better. There was one mistake that I would like to clarify, and it's actually very positive. The retention rate for this fall has actually been 55%, not 46. So we're only down 1% on the retention. So.
Wow. Well, that's great news.
It is great news, and I'm sorry. Thank you, Patricia, for pointing that out.
I
want to echo
to recognize Patricia Diawara. Patricia does such a great job with our data and her team. Patricia, Hannah, thank you for that. Zach, appreciate all of you.
Yes. And with the COVID safety, I just want to give a reminder to fill out those Lucient reports. If you have any symptoms or see anybody or know anybody who does, please direct them to the COVID page where you'll find links to that. We had a lot of questions about the vaccine and how that's going to work and how that rollout is going to work, including questions like who's going to let us know? How are they going to let us know? What if I work in one county, but I live in the other? Very challenging questions.
Well, those are challenging questions. There is quite a bit of chaos around the state revolving around vaccinations because they are rolling out on a county by county basis. Counties were distributed vaccines, and then they're making their own policies and implementing the practices, policies of the state, county by county. Rural counties tend to be quite a bit ahead of us right now. In fact, I've heard from rural counterparts within the community college system that they're expecting vaccinations on campus right away. That is not the case for the urban colleges. One of the things that we'll do after this presentation, we'll send out a link to a health department website that has been recently stood up to give information about vaccines and when people will be vaccinated. What we know is that faculty and frontline people in education, so I think that would be people like advisors, people in financial aid, anybody working directly with students, Learning Commons, of course, and faculty who are teaching face-to-face or want to be teaching face-to-face, you're going to be 1B, priority 1B. So right now we're on 1A, and we don't know when we'll get to 1B. I've heard from, and I have had a chance to meet with, talk directly with our health department director, Susan Whalen, Susan just wasn't sure yet. She said she hoped by the end of February, by February, sometime in February, that we would be vaccinating 1B. We're just not clear yet how quickly this will go. And the disparities around the state make this difficult. So many of you might talk to peers, especially peers who might be at some of our rural colleges, and you might hear they've already had an opportunity to be vaccinated, but we are not there yet. Honestly, I have no idea about the question revolving around living in different counties. But what I do know and what my hope is that we're going to be able to set up vaccination sites on campus. That's gone on at some of the other schools around the state. We already have a testing center on our campus, so it might make sense that we might be able to set up a vaccination site on our campus as well, that we could get most of the people at Pikes Peak who want to be and who are in line to be vaccinated done pretty quickly. And so that's what I've been asking for, yet to be determined if that'll happen.
And yes, we're 1B. Somebody's just asking of where we are and at least those who are.
We have confirmed that higher ed, just like K-12, is prioritized as 1B.
Somebody, Linda Hertz was asking, would you remind us what's going to be in the CTE building?
The CTE building, if we decide to go forward with that, would have things like machining and welding and CAD drawing, basically all the things that are in the B building right now, except for, HVAC, which is in desperate need of more space. We intended and thought those things would move to that building. Construction would be part of that building. And then we would be able to open up more of the existing B building to better serve auto tech, diesel, and auto body collision, that they would be able to expand their space in the B building. Those other programs are really in need of more space. If you walk through and look at some of the facilities there, they're borderline unsafe because of the close proximity that equipment has to one another. The real question will be, will we have a drop in on-campus enrollment, and will we be able to repurpose some space to better serve those CPE programs, or do we need to continue forward with constructing the new building? And so I think over the next year or so, we'll be able to make that determination.
And a question about why is it that we chose not to drop the additional fee for online classes for fall and spring? It seems unfair given the lack of choices of delivery methods for students.
Yeah, good question. This question is getting a lot of attention from our state board and our community college system leadership. So we are thinking about this a lot. Number one, we don't have the authority to do that. The fees and tuition rates for all of Pikes Peak Community College are set by our state board. So we don't get to just decide we're going to change the tuition or lower the tuition for online classes. I think there's a real sense that online has become prohibitively expensive, too expensive. We are having a hard time justifying why online tuition should be so much higher than in-person tuition. And I do expect movement on this. What you might see is a long-term freeze on that tuition. I will say that part of the problem, to just be really honest and candid about this, is that the revenues from online tuition are built into our operating models for the community college system and for the colleges, individual colleges as well. So we would be talking about, if we were to change online tuition to make it equal to the in-person tuition, which now really remote instruction tuition, the impact would be many, many millions of dollars. I was trying to remember how many millions of dollars that would be, and really probably not sustainable for the community college system to just make that change, like as perhaps suggested, that we would just reduce the tuition because we're relying on that revenue. We would be able to, I think, to freeze that tuition or start walking it back slowly over time, over a number of years.
And last question, can we use the CARES money to buy hotspots for students, Wi-Fi hotspots?
So we can, and a lot of discussion has gone into this. I have had Cyril Parent, Cyril, as you all know, our phenomenal IT director. He has visited multiple staff leadership team meetings to talk about hotspots. We just really don't think that is a solution that serves students well. That there tends to be not enough bandwidth with the hotspots. Colleges that have done this have not had good success with it. They're highly reliant on people's cell phone coverage within an area. That might not be the best solution for students, but we're continuing to look at this. And of course, as we look at this next round of CARES Act money, we're continuing to think about it. I will remind you that only 8% of our students said technology and access to technology and Wi-Fi was a major problem for them. They ranked it as the most serious of problems. So it perhaps hasn't been as big of an issue as we thought it would be. We have done a great job. The Learning Commons has done a great job of keeping our computer labs open. But what I really want to say about CARES Act funding is we've said no to almost nothing. When people have come forward and said, we need this technology to help our department, we've said yes. And other people have come forward and said, well, we've got an idea. We could buy this. This would help us with remote learning. And we've said yes. So keep those ideas coming, keep asking. We're going to keep approving things. And as we look at this next round of funding, I think a different question in hotspots might be, do we actually do some funding for Wi-Fi for students in their homes to have them hardwired in instead of trying to do the hotspots? And if we do that, how does that work? What kind of process do we put in place to make that work? Well, I know I am out of time and over time. I want to thank you. I want to acknowledge again the great job that you've done. You all, our faculty, have been just phenomenal. Our staff has been phenomenal. Across the college, we have continued and maintained our progress and done such good work. I just want to thank you and wish you the very best this semester. Keep reaching out with your ideas and keep talking to me and to your leadership to let us know about the challenges you're facing. Have a wonderful spring of 2021.